Hi guys, how you doing? Before we start the story, I just want to ask for a little support. Please help me reach 1,000 subscribers. It means the world to me. Don't forget to hit that like button, drop a comment, and of course, subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much, and now let's get into today's story.
This is a story from Reddit. I opened the oven and for a moment, everything smelt like home. Rosemary, lemon, the small sweetness of roasting peppers. I had been up since dawn prepping the meal. Roast lamb stuffed with herbs, a tray of gratin potatoes, a vase of late sunflowers on the table. It was supposed to be a normal Sunday with family. My mother, her brother, grandchildren running underfoot. Instead, it became the day my wife, Maribel, cooked for her ex and made me wash the dishes. We'd been married 12 years. My name is Elior, and I believed in the ordinary kinds of loyalty, the boring kind you build with mortgage payments and school runs. Maribel was vivid and theatrical, prone to sudden flights of glamour, but I thought that was the funny part of our life. I was wrong. The hint came the week before, when she started whispering on the phone and closing tabs when I walked into the room. The small alarms I ignored at first, receipts for dinners I hadn't been invited to, lipstick on an old napkin, a name I didn't know, Renan popping up in a contact list she claimed belonged to an old friend. I should have peeled at the seams then, but pride and naivete are loud silences. On the day, guests arrived with casseroles and gossip. Grandfather Aurelio told a long story about vineyards and youth, while little Isola smeared jam on her sleeve. Maribel flitted between the oven and the sink like a queen at a festival. I watched her with a familiar warm pride, until she excused herself and disappeared into the hallway to answer a message. When she returned, she wore that small guarded smile that people keep when they hide something from the people they love. "There's a table for you," she said to Renan when he arrived. He had that smooth, confident gait, the kind older women call charming, and he moved like someone who fit into other people's memories easily. My brother-in-law clapped him on the back, oblivious. Nobody realized what the seating chart would mean. The first moment I felt the cold cut through was when Maribel led Renan by the arm past the carved turkey toward the head of the table. She placed a napkin on his lap as if he were a visiting dignitary. I pretended not to notice, slicing roast and pouring wine, but the air felt thinner. Wait until the end. What she asked me to do next is the part people say they wouldn't believe. We ate, forced to laughter, the clinking of cutlery, my aunt's voice trailing off as she noticed. Maribel's conversation with Renan was private and animated, their eyes drawing lines across the table I couldn't cross. At one point, Renan picked up a slice of warm bread and held it out to Maribel as if it were a token. She accepted it with a slow smile I'd never seen meant for me. That smile had the texture of betrayal. Halfway through the meal, the room quieted as Maribel stood. I thought she might give a toast or sing our family's ridiculous song, something harmless. Instead, she walked to the sink, topped the faucet, and looked squarely at me. "Elior," she said casually, "would you mind doing the dishes? They make such a mess and you're always so good at cleaning up." The sentence looked ordinary on the surface, but carried the weight of a verdict. The table froze. There was a tiny, awful pause. Isola looked up at me, fork still in her hand. My mother blinked as if the world had slipped a gear. The sacrament of hospitality, of serving and sharing, had been rewired. I felt a flush rising, a shame that tasted metallic. Maribel's eyes were cool, almost content. She hadn't asked as a spouse needs help. She'd asked as if commanding a servant. "Now," I managed, my voice thinner than I wanted. "During dinner?" She smiled, a brittle thing that didn't reach her eyes. "Yes, Renan is a guest. I want everything perfect." She reached across to touch his hand under the table, and I saw the movement as an insult carved into the wood. It wasn't about the dishes. It was about place and value. She was placing him at the center and turning me into background furniture. I could have stood and walked out. I've replayed that day 1,000 times, and I still argue with myself about cowardice versus strategy. I stayed. I took the plates to the sink and began to wash. I let my hands become the mechanical proof of work, while my head filled with the bright, stinging certainty. The water was hot, and the dish soap smelled like lemon and humiliation. As I scrubbed, I heard their laughter thrum through the house like a mocking drum. Renan complimented her roast in the most intimate of ways, praising not the recipe, but the way she remembered how to catch light in a story. She leaned closer, and their knees touched under the table. My hands in soapy water trembled. "You shouldn't let him do this at home," my mother said quietly to me as she left with her bag. She took Isola with her and didn't meet my eyes. "This isn't right, son." The words were small and searing. People who love you quietly toss you lifelines, My mother had just thrown me one, and I clung to it like a drowning man. I rinsed and stocked, each plate a ledger entry of the day I watched my life rearrange. When I dried my hands, she came up behind me with a towel and wrapped it around my shoulders like a guilty consolation. "You're overreacting," she murmured. It was a small, meaningful reunion. Don't make it bigger. Her breath smelled faintly of white wine. But I had seen the look in his eyes when he told a story about a summer they shared. I had heard the private language in the way they suggested a trip might be revived sometime soon. Her hush-hush text made sense in the new geometry of our home. The grief wasn't cinematic. It was a grind, cutting small and visible pieces out of me every hour. After the dinner, I found a crumpled napkin tucked under the silverware drawer. On it was a phone number and a penciled, "Let's meet next Sunday," in handwriting that matched the cards I had once given Maribel for our anniversary. The napkin was a breadcrumb, and I tasted bile. The betrayal was not a single act, but a pattern, a timetable printed in grease. The next week, she left to visit family. I drove by the little cafe where Renan worked and saw them through the window, smiling over coffee, close and comfortable. The scene was innocuous in the way dagger thrusts are. No screeching, no dramatic scenes, only the steady, unflashy continuity that kills trust. She'd brought him back into the orbit of our life and taught everyone a new script, one where I would play mute, tidying the aftermath. I confronted her in the quiet of an attic room where the winter boxes sleep. She didn't shout. She surveyed me with a calm that made my chest hollow. "You took the easy way," she said simply. "You make life comfortable," and I was restless. Renan remembers things you forgot. He's a part of my story, Elior. You always wanted peaceful. I wanted lit. Her words were not explanations. They were resignations. I asked for the truth, and she gave me a categorization. We never stopped caring for each other. It was a phrase arranged to sound neutral, but to carry the sting of a verdict. She wasn't leaving to hurt me. She was remaking herself and expected me to applaud domestic stability from the sidelines. I left the marriage papers on the kitchen counter a month later. I did not make a show. There was no scene because I had expended all theater washing plates and collecting small humiliations. She looked at the papers, at the edge of our life written in legal shorthand, and smiled with the same coolness she used at the table. People asked me if I felt relief. The truth is complicated. There was a hollow relief, yes, like a rope finally cut, and an old, raw ache for the parts that were good. Mornings with coffee, a shared joke, a child's crooked drawings on the fridge, but each of those memories was shadowed now by knowing what shapes had been rearranged without me knowing. I tell you this because the smallest indignities can calcify into the largest fractures. Don't ignore the napkins, the closed tabs, the small sentences that reposition you at the edge of your own life.